Welcome to Witch Talks, a series for spiritual seekers, witches, and enlightened souls. I'm Hannah the Suburban Witch, an intuitive tarot reader, astrologer, and eclectic witch, and I hope you're ready to get up close and personal with your favourite witches. In this episode, I'm chatting with Michelle from Holisticism, a witch-led business that bridges the gap from the mystic and the realistic to make well-being more accessible to more people. They host the 12th House podcast, which is a witchy business podcast that I adore. I can't wait to share their work and wisdom with you all today, so let's get into it. Michelle is joining us via Zoom all the way from Los Angeles. Hey, welcome to the show, Michelle. How are you today?
I'm so good. So happy to be talking to you. And I'm so impressed that you just rattled that off like without even taking a breath. I usually have to re-record our intros like 17 times every time I do it.
I think I've only had to re-record once, and my Patreon supporters who get access to like the uncut version would be aware of those ones. But there was one where I use almost like a template for how I kind of want to introduce people, like this is who they are, this is what they do, this is what they are, like that sort of a thing. And I'd written it and forgotten to delete the previous template. So it was this really long intro, and he's sitting there going, that doesn't sound like me. And I'm going, that's not you, that's my previous guest.
It's like, wow, I'm totally blacking out on this part of my life where I accomplished so much in this completely different industry.
Exactly. And it took me a little minute to connect. I was like, I'm so sorry. We will just quickly edit that and start again.
That's hilarious. We seem to always run into the biggest tech issues when we have a guest already on the line. You know, they're like, they can't hear us, we can't hear them. We're like, what is going on here? But yeah, that's the life of a podcaster, I guess.
Absolutely. That is podcast life for sure. And even when I'm a guest on other people's podcasts and they're like, I'm so sorry, this never happens. I'm like, dude, it happens to me all the time. Like, I'm impressed it never happens to you.
I don't know about you, but it feels like Mercury retrograde constantly running a podcast. So yeah.
So can you tell everybody listening, what is Holisticism exactly? What is this amazing brand that you have created?
You sound like my parents. They're like, what do you do? What's your job? Are you in radio?
What do you
do? No, it's great. I was a professional modern dancer for a really long time. And then I started working in tech, and my parents have at no point in my adult life understood what my job was. They're just like, glad you're happy, which is awesome. But Holisticism got started after I stopped working in tech because I really wanted to bridge the gap between the intuitive, what we know in our souls, in our essence, in our like cells and vibration, and the intellectual. Because I met so many people, mostly women in New York and in LA, who were working these like crazy, amazing jobs, who were entrepreneurs, who wanted to do really big things, but who were also extremely spiritual and magical and intuitive, and were almost hiding that part of themselves because they were afraid to reveal it. And often that intuition was sort of like why they were so successful, but they had to almost reverse engineer their explanations for why they knew certain things or why they were successful or why they believed what they believed. And I wanted to sort of find a place where we could talk about both of those things, right? The sort of intellectual around running a business and being an entrepreneur, especially being a capitalism critical entrepreneur, and being a witch or an intuitive person or whatever you want to call yourself, a medium, a psychic, and work with those two things together, not cutting off one part of ourselves, really like embracing all of our multiplicity and all of our dynamism, and sort of calling up these special skills when we need them. So that's what Holisticism started as, this place where people could connect. And over the last 5 years, it's grown to be an educational platform and a community of over 100,000 people now, which is crazy. So we do a lot from, teaching our membership community of about 700 entrepreneurs to one-off classes that people can take on everything from intuitive business to being what we call squiggly brained, creative, nonlinear thinker, and finding systems that work for you in a world with many systems that are meant to keep us down and actually like make us feel badly about who we are. So yeah, I feel like I'm word salading on you, but really Holisticism is about self-actualization and business is just one of those ways. Starting a business, being a creative, that's one of the ways that you self-actualize.
I love all of that. And I'm a big fan of your podcast and everything that you put out there as well.
Oh, thanks.
One thing I'd love to just sort of zero in on there. So you describe yourself as capitalism critical. Can you go into that a little bit more as a business working in capitalist society, how you can be capitalist critical?
Yeah, I love that turn of phrase because I think it's very popular right now to call yourself an anti-capitalist, which we totally can be. Like, you can definitely identify with that. But I think if you run a business, you are buying into capitalism. Like, if you're getting paid for what you do, or even bartering for your goods and services, you're buying into capitalism. And I think that sometimes when we just sort of identify ourselves in an extreme, whether it's a hyper-capitalist or an anti-capitalist, we're missing the interesting middle part, which is the gray and the really like questioning, right? And that's what I like about being capitalism critical. I want to critically engage with everything that I'm a part of, to look at it and wonder, well, is this the best way I could do things? Does this make sense to me? Is this in alignment? Because there are plenty of, let's say, anti-capitalist beliefs that I think are really cool, but there are a lot that I don't necessarily agree with. Same thing with capitalism. I don't agree with like the majority of capitalism, and I would say the structures and sites of oppression that it upholds and perpetuates. But there are some elements of capitalism that I do believe in, or that I do want to experiment and explore with. So that's what it means to be capitalism critical to me, but I guess you could interpret it however you want. And I think in terms of like the entrepreneurs that we work with and the creators that we work with, a lot of them, maybe what's held them back. And I think this definitely is who I was before I started Holisticism. I didn't want to like make more waste in the world. I didn't want to like contribute to all the noise out there. I wanted to create something that was generative or regenerative as opposed to degenerative. And I think that's what, capitalism as we know it tends to be degenerative and extractive, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's just the way that we practice it right now. So I think there are more of us that just really question, is this how it's supposed to be and how it has to be? And push against that, then we can potentially create a type of capitalism that actually is regenerative over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you have, or at least you've mentioned on the podcast, a pricing structure that is, I guess, different to capitalist typical business pricing structures. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, we have sliding scale. Well, we've experimented with sliding scale. We've experimented with tons of pricing structures. And okay, here's the thing. Anytime you're dealing with money, you have to deal with your own shit, which is your own shadow work around money, or your own beliefs around money and worth and value. And first and foremost, anything that you offer the world is invaluable. So like you and I sitting and having this conversation today, you could say something that flips a switch in someone's mind that completely transforms the way that they walk through the world for the rest of their life. And you just gave that away for free, right? And that thing is invaluable. That note, that pearl, it could cause them to earn millions and millions of dollars in the future. So I find it difficult when people say, oh, ask for your worth when it comes to pricing, because my worth is I'm invaluable. Like every person is invaluable, no matter how quote unquote expert they are. That's what's amazing about being a human being. That's what's beautiful about being human, right? So that's complicated because so many people tell us to price ourselves according to our worth or according to our value, but we're invaluable. So a little bit tricky. And we have our own issues, or let's say like shadow around money and what we think we should earn, what we think we're capable of earning, or what our energetic minimum is, or our energetic maximum, what we expect. And then we have to go outside of ourselves and ask other people to pay us. And they've got their own shit too, right? Like that we don't even know about, that we can't even begin to unpack. So pricing can be really challenging if you're running a capitalism critical business. And one of the ways that we've experimented with, like, can we make it a little easier? Can we also take people with us, sort of empower them as opposed to enable them? Like sort of offer them the opportunity to level up when it comes to their relationship with wealth and money, by thinking about being in community as opposed to being individualistic. So I'm meandering here. Sorry, I totally have ADHD. So let me know if I go off too far off the track. But capitalism, and I think the worst parts of capitalism push individualism, right? And the best parts of like regenerative, sort of circular economies push community care. And ideally, especially for those of us who consider ourselves witches, part of the witch wound is, I would say, we're used to community care. Like that's in our DNA, that's in our past lives of, I show up for my community, I'm a pillar in my community, I provide in a way, and my community provides for me. And that's not necessarily exchanging dollar bills. So it can feel very challenging to ask for money for something that you've been used to sort of exchanging from, in a more, like, not to be lame, but heart-centered way for so many past generations. So if we're thinking about being more community-centered, then maybe we want to think instead of offering sliding scale options where if I pay X amount, let's say over what the sort of market price of something is, then I'm contributing to helping someone else who can't afford that product being able to come in and enjoy that with me. And because we're in community together, I can sort of, in good faith, trust that they are going to bring value because they are invaluable to our community, and take what we learn together, hopefully through the product or the service, and spread that out into the world and make the world a better place. So sliding scale, long story short, we experimented with sliding scale because we just wanted to see like what would happen if we used a community forward model to price our services and to offer courses, to take something that's sometimes worth $1,200 and offer it for also $500, and then maybe for a middle price of $800, and see what happens. Like, how would people react to that? Would they understand that being in community is really important? And if they have a little extra, or if they self-identify as sort of being a more privileged place, that they're willing to pay a little bit more? Or is that daunting and scary? So we've been experimenting with that since COVID hit, actually.
And how has that worked? Because immediately my brain, and when I first heard of the idea, well, most people are just going to go with the cheaper price, right? That's what everyone wants to do. They want to save money.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that's been our biggest sort of struggle, is every other thing that you buy, and think about how much you shop all day long. Like, you buy a coffee at Starbucks, you go and you drop your kid off at school, and then you pay a toll to go on the toll road. Like, there's just so much that we're paying for constantly. That's a set price that we don't get to decide how much we pay, right? So if we're given the choice, we're constantly in individualism mindset, looking for the best price for ourselves. And then to sort of have to flip on a dime and be like, oh, wait, no, this is for community, is really challenging. So we found that what made the most sense for us was to lay out these options for people. And then also from a business perspective, what did we need to sustain ourselves? Like, I have a team, I offer them healthcare and competitive salaries and time off. And I want to make sure that me personally, I have enough money in the bank for a year to pay salaries. Okay, great. So that's what I need, my energetic minimum to run a healthy business. So anytime I launch a class or a community offering, if I'm going to offer it at a sliding scale, because I don't always offer things at a sliding scale, but I do a lot of the time, I think about, okay, what do I need to make bare minimum wise to just make ends meet here? Like, what's going to be my break even? Okay, great. That means I'm going to have X number of people at the highest tier, X number of people at the middle tier, X number of people at the lowest tier, super discount where I'm losing money off them, right? On if they decide to join, right? So I think about that sort of ratio and what makes sense for me and my business and what I need at any given time. And then kind of creating those slots, and then informing the community and saying, okay, listen, we've got 30 slots in the highest, 20 slots in the medium tier, 10 slots in the lowest tier. But if we sell 40 slots in that highest tier, then I can open up more scholarship spots. That really empowers people to, I think, be conscientious about what they're taking from the community. Because something that I notice a lot with people who are practicing being anti-capitalist is that as business owners, they feel depleted because they're giving so much of themselves and they're not getting nourished back. And in a way that's dishonoring to both you and to your community. And it doesn't actually support like sustainability in a sustainable business or regeneration in your business. So yeah, that's kind of how it's worked. And it's been tricky. Like there have definitely been times where I feel like I want to tear my hair out. I'm like, why don't people understand? And then other times where I'm like, I totally get it. Like, yeah, it makes sense.
The only examples I have of a similar pricing scale or pricing style would be there is a couple of restaurants here in Australia. What are they called? Lentil is Anything. Lentil is Anything. It is a vegan vegetarian restaurant, and it is basically pay what you think it's worth, and they'll give like an example of how much you should pay or what it costs, and you can pay more, and that goes to provide for the next person who maybe can't buy themselves a meal, but you don't have to pay if you can't. And for people working there, they're usually people who really need a job. They'll give a job to anyone, come in and work for us. Like I love that. I absolutely love that. I think we need more of that in the world. And I think it's a fantastic community-led business, right? That is,
I love that.
Brilliant. But then translating that into, or those values into a self-owned business similar to like what I have is like, how do you even do that? How do you even start with that and then still make a living to pay for what you need to do? Does that make sense?
It 100% makes sense. And like we're a bootstrap business. So I paid to start this business myself, and there's no like investment from someone. It's just me. Right. And that means that I have to like run a healthy business in order to survive, and a lean business in order to survive and thrive and continue to like be here to continue to offer value to people and offer so much for free. Like you offer this free podcast. If you think about how freaking valuable that is, and YouTube videos, like it's crazy how much you're providing people. Yeah. And a giant corporation like can maybe play around with that. I also think that there's something to paying in person where there's almost like societal peer pressure. Like if you have to face someone and be like, I think that this sandwich is worth $0. Here's $0. That's really different than sort of anonymously buying something from behind a computer screen, I think. But I also have faith that like people, as they begin to understand this, they'll understand it. I just don't think that anything in our world reinforces this idea of community care on a consistent basis. And so we kind of have to meet people where they're at. And I think in some ways it can be really stressful to have to choose what to pay, like it can like cause a lot of anxiety. So
what if I get it wrong? That's the feeling I get.
Yes, exactly. Or like, oh, I'm feeling guilty. Like I'm so maybe I'm way more privileged than I think. I should be paying more, even though I can't really afford to pay more. And that doesn't feel good. So we offer sliding scale on our membership community, the North Node, but for pretty much everything else, we found that people prefer that we offer payment plans, and that makes the work just as accessible. And we offer so much free content. So I'm happy with where we're at pricing wise.
That's awesome. I love that. I've considered and I've played around with the idea of potentially having like a discount for those in marginalized communities. And then when it even came to putting that together, I was like, is that like, not that is it wrong, but how do you do that without then, I guess, offending someone by offering that? And it just ended up going like, that's kind of like, I'd love to make my services more accessible to those who need them, but I don't know how to do that. So that's, I guess, one of the values we can maybe even talk about today.
Yeah. I think that like, I totally hear you. That's something that we ran into with creating a sliding scale is like, how do we tell people like, oh, and we can't really be prescriptive, right? Like, oh, you should be here and you should be here and you should be here. So I think what I found really helpful, I found a chiropractor who offered sliding scale in New York. They unfortunately went out of business, but because probably they were offering sliding scale and it wasn't working for their brick and mortar space, unfortunately. But I really liked the way that they set up their sliding scale. And they said effectively, like, if you identify with this level, so you often cannot pay for rent, you often can't pay for healthcare, you often, you have debt like of over $20,000, something like that, then you might be at this tier. If you're maybe the next tier up, it's like, I sometimes feel like it's a squeeze to afford rent. I sometimes feel like I have to budget in order to pay for food, et cetera, et cetera. And that way people can self-identify. And I think when it comes to things like scholarships, at this point, I don't even ask, or like, if you think you need a scholarship, I'm going to take it at your word that like you need the help. And like, I don't know what you've gone through. I don't know how what trauma you've experienced, what marginalization you've experienced. It's none of my business. And if I have the opportunity to help you and make it easier for you, then I will. And if I don't have that opportunity, then I'll let you know, like, I can't do that right now, but here's what I can do for you, and try to come up with a solution. But that's felt the most like expansive for me, I guess.
Yeah, I think the other problem I ran into was even things like, at the moment, the week that we're filming this, it's Naidoc week here in Australia, which is basically a celebration of Indigenous peoples, so the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders of Australia. And I was like, oh, maybe I should do a Naidoc week discount. And then I was like, am I then capitalizing on this community? And so I get into that freeze mode where I was like, I don't know. So I'm just going to hold off on that thought, but it's something that, I want to help. I want to uplift marginalized communities. I want to do my part, and then I get stuck. So that's my real and raw brain functions that everyone can hear and listen to as we're going through this.
I'm so glad you're saying that, because I think so many people identify that way and feel that same way, right? Of like, well, I want to do something, but is this actually, am I being more offensive? Or am I like, I don't know, like
white saviorism.
Exactly. Like, am I just doing that? Are people going to think I'm just doing this to look good? Should I even publicize this thing that I do or offer? Like, you're kind of, it feels like you're really between like a rock and a hard place in some ways. And that's why I feel like, I don't know, I go back to community care over and over again, of just saying like, well, how can I like care for the people in my community and make it as accessible and inclusive as I can? And when I go just back down to that, and I make sure that that's the messaging, and I reiterate that as often as possible, like, we're going to do everything that we can to make it work, so that you can like work with us and take classes with us. And if it doesn't work right now, we'll find other solutions. That feels like the most genuine.
So how do you use witchcraft, because you are the head witch in charge, how do you use witchcraft to your advantage within your business model?
I mean, I think that we're constantly casting spells, especially with our language. Before I started Holisticism, I did a lot. I worked in editorial and tech, and a lot of what I did was branding, writing, copywriting. And I feel like copywriting and learning how to be a really great copywriter was like when I learned magic. Like, all of a sudden, all of these doors that I didn't even realize were doors, that I thought were walls, like opened and flew open, and things happened so quickly. And it reminded me of magic, like that, having that clear intention, using the right frame, using the right ingredients in order to get my desired outcome. That it also made sense that like, there's a reason we call it spelling, right?
Spelling is a spell.
Exactly. It's powerful. And I started thinking about that in terms of like, everything that we do really in business is we set an intention, we craft a sort of structure or a spell, right? That framework for that thing. If we're going to use a chime candle, or we're going to use a binding spell, right? Well, like, how can I sell this thing? Is it going to be an email? Is it going to be an Instagram reel? Is it going to be a sales page that looks a specific way? And then thinking about like, well, what are the different components that make that thing work, that are going to like that I can test too. I mean, thinking about like a witch's grimoire, we're constantly writing a spell and trying it out and fixing it and sort of fiddling around with it until we know how it works, and that it, well, not how it works, but we know that it works, right? And that just felt like business to me, right? Like that's what we're doing in business all the time. And when I'm like not careful with my words, when I'm not careful with the imagery that I use, sometimes it goes haywire, just like sometimes when I'm not intentional with, my spells or even with my own magic, with my own energy, like it'll come back to bite me if I don't really think a spell through, right? So I think about that a lot, and we practice that a lot, from spell casting with our writing to also like creating archetypes in our business for how our digital archetype shows up. So what is it? What are the sigils that we're using, the visual spells that we're casting? What is our desired outcome? Like, what do we want? I think so often when we start a business, we're not really quite sure what we want, right? We're like, I want money, or I want to be famous, or I want to have 100,000 followers on Instagram. But really drilling down as to why, like, why do I want that thing? And I think you have to ask that when you're casting a spell too. You have to be like, but why? Like, why do I want this to happen? Like, what is at the root of this in order to like really pick the right components to make it happen? I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's wonderful. And I often, when I'm teaching any form of spell work, I'm usually talking about, and this is what my brain was buzzing with as you were talking, layering, like the layering that goes into it, into the researching. Like if you're just using set ingredients that someone's like, oh, use this, great, they might work. But if you go and research and find ingredients that maybe are in your native landscape or are traditional to your heritage or your culture or your family, and you bring those together, and then maybe you do some extra work in bringing this in and read this book to add that, the more layers you put into it, you add an astrological day to the component when you do, maybe look at the lunar phase, or maybe the astrological hour of the day. All of these things are layering, and that's adding power to your spell. And now I'm like, whoa, all of the research that I do for each new product that I put out, maybe all of that is layering on that energy that goes out into manifesting it and creating it out into the world. So yes, my brain's tingling.
Yes, that's so right. And the way that you explain that made me think of, we often talk about like a personal brand, right? Or like your voice, right? Well, when you try to write in someone else's voice, it's never as good. It's never as powerful. It doesn't convert as many people. But when you really find like your voice, your truth, your tone, it just rings true. And I'm Italian, so I grew up with like definitely a strega Italian grandmother. And so much of like what I have read about in books is just stuff that she did all the time that I just didn't even think about because she was a witch, because she's Italian. And I think about like how much is innate to us, especially as creatives and entrepreneurs and intuitive people, that we sort of like keep down because we're not quite, we think it might not be correct, right? Like, well, everyone else is running their business this way. And I guess I just kind of have to follow the crowd and follow the formula that everyone else is following. But to your point, you can use a spell that's written in some book somewhere that a lot of people have said works, but sometimes you need to add your own special juices to it. Often you need to, in order for it to really be as powerful and potent as possible. And that's like your uniqueness. And often I think like the shadow, the part of you that you're most afraid to show to the world. And I've said the witch wound already, but I think that comes with the witch wound too.
Absolutely. And I think earlier you mentioned about the witch wound, and one thing that I see consistently, especially in anything like tarot Facebook groups, right? Where people are like,
that's a dangerous world.
It really is. I cannot charge, or you shouldn't charge for your services because it is your spiritual gift that you are giving. And then you get the other side, they're like, yeah, but I need to eat. So, which I'm totally on board with, right? But I think that wound comes through that way, as in, I can't charge for this because I can't be seen for this, because back in the day and in our history, if you were seen for doing something unusual, out of the ordinary, that didn't go so well for you. So I think that wound comes up a lot of the time in letting ourselves be seen online, letting ourselves be pricing at a way that may get attention as well, or even asking for money. It's like a visibility and a vulnerability that we don't want to feel.
100%. I think that we often self-sabotage and prevent ourselves from being seen,
Yeah.
either fully or like for who we completely are, or at all, because we're afraid of being like, metaphorically burned at the stake. But there's this really interesting connection between capitalism, the sort of primitive accumulation, which is the start of capitalism in Europe, in feudal Europe, and the witch, sort of like the original witch hunts. And Sylvia Federici is an amazing socialist scholar who's done a lot of work around witches, women, and the origins of capitalism. And she posits that because feudal Europe was moving from, collective shared space into a capitalist structure where individuals had land ownership as opposed to sharing land together, it behooved governments to get rid of older single women, most of those women who were considered healers or, sort of like the midwives or the witches or the herbalists of a community, because they couldn't produce, like literally produce laborers, give birth to more people to work those fields, and to make more money for those landowners. So they ended up sort of rounding up as many single women, powerful, independently powerful women as they could, and burning them at the stake to take their land and to take their property. And it's a really interesting intersection of sort of the mythology of witches, and also like, wow, that is definitely a deep wound tied to the origins of capitalism. No wonder this is so hard for us, you know?
Yeah, I'm in a little witchy, we call it the Witches as Professionals, like group chat with a couple of other witches who have their own business.
Witches as Professionals. I hope it's WAP.
It is. It totally is.
Love it.
And in that group, which is actually how I found your podcast. So because we share like, oh my gosh, I really want to raise my prices. I need to, but I'm scared. Or is this too much? Is this not enough? What do you guys think? It's those sorts of vulnerable conversations that we have with one another, and we all relate and we all get it. And there'll be one person in the group that's like really amazing with advice around one particular subject, and then someone else that's really great around this, and we all just bring it all together. And I love that little group. And Aunt Carla is in that, and she was the one that mentioned your podcast. She was like, tell her I say hi.
Oh, she's in the North Node. Aunt Carla's amazing.
So she said, you guys have got to get onto this podcast. It is all about witchy intuitive business. And I was like, okay, I'm going to check that out. And usually I'm very anal with my podcast listening. I will go to the very first episode and I will go through in order.
Oh, I'm so glad you didn't go to the very first one.
No, I did.
Probably so bad.
I did.
It's probably so bad. I can't believe that you listen.
So I'm listening in order, as I do with every single one of my podcasts. And then it got to, I was scrolling down to like download the next one I was up to, and I saw your series, the creator profiles one. Yeah. And I was like, I can't go out of order.
Like, I want to skip ahead.
Yeah. What if, because the problem is I don't want there to be an in-joke that I don't know about and don't understand, a reference to a previous episode. I get really funny about it. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm sure it'll be fine. This looks really interesting. And so I clicked on that and then binged that. So I've done this like the start and the end, and I haven't done the middle section, but
that's great.
You'll
get to it when you get to it.
One of the things I loved about one of the earlier episodes is your 4 pillars for intuitive business.
Yeah.
And that is actually, because we're going to talk about some of my business goals today, that is actually how I came up with some of my goals, by going through your 4 pillars.
Hell yeah, dude. I love that.
Yeah. So I did that back in May. So just before we have our financial year in Australia is from the 1st of July until the end of June. So I try and set my business goals just before the end of financial year for the next financial year, if that makes sense. So I look at sort of where it's at, where I want to be going, and then do those yearly goals. And then I've always got my big like grand overhead goals as well in the background. But yeah, so in those that little series that you did, which I think was 6 episodes, am I right?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Yeah,
something
we try to do like our series, a little like series together that feels cohesive. It seems, honestly, podcast tip, it seems to anyone listening, seems to do really well when we sort of group things together as a series. People really like that.
Fantastic. So it's a creator series, and all about, people that are creating using social media and all sorts of things. And
Mm-hmm.
in that, you were doing these case studies on real people out in the world, and that was super helpful. And then I messaged you and I was like, can you do one on me? Because that is fantastic.
Yeah. And I was like, look, I looked at your stuff and I was like, hell yeah, dude, let's do it. This sounds amazing.
So
but we're going to do it in real time. We're going to do it right now.
Yeah, I'm totally excited. I'm going to give you the floor and then you just tell me what you need from me and I'm all ears.
Yeah. So whenever I'm looking at sort of like case studying a business, or like going in and sort of tinkering around with a business, I want to know what the sort of top 3 goals are. Because, and we use top 3 a lot in our work because we pick the top 3 most important things we're doing each week. I have a list of 30 things, right? But what are the most important things, the needle moving things, because we tend to get sort of like lost in the sort of admin of it all. And the same thing can happen with our goals. They can be a little bit like ephemeral. And we're like, oh, I thought that like focusing on this one thing was going to actually feel supportive to me, but I did it and it didn't really do anything. So when you reference the 4 pillars of intuitive business, that's growth, revenue, retention, and impact. So thinking about those 4 parts of your business. So for you, what are your top 3 goals in your business? I know that you wrote down a bunch of amazing ones. So, but what would you say are your top 3 of this list?
So at the moment, it would be increasing my passive income. That's been a goal for a while, and it's something I've been trying to focus on, but that takes time and energy as well to build up to. Mainly because at the moment, especially doing one-on-one with people, it's very time intensive in order to make what I need to make to have a livable wage.
Yep.
So then being so time intensive, I have less time to work on the things that bring a lot of joy. Like, not that my one-on-ones don't bring me joy, but I want to write and review and read more books to bring more quality content to people. I want to create future products, or maybe create a tarot deck, or create more courses, and like all these creative things that take time to even sit down and plan. And when you're just going, session to session with people, you don't have that leeway, especially with all the other things and admin stuff. So increasing passive income allows me
having a family and like taking time off and like nourishing yourself and like having a life, like all of that. That's really important.
And I think a lot of people would be very surprised to hear that. So I'm a stay-at-home mum, and my son, who's only 1.5, only goes to daycare 12 hours a week.
Yeah.
And
you're a super person.
So that's 12 hours a week to do everything that I do. And I do quite a lot. And so I work pretty much every single night, and I'll try and work at least an hour during the day when he's napping, when I have him at home. Yeah. Then you've got kids that are sick, or life that happens. I get sick. My husband goes away. He's in the military, so often he's away for long stretches of time. So trying to cram all that in, hence if I have passive income, there's less pressure on me to do the everyday one-on-one with people so consistently. Does that make sense?
Totally. And absolutely. And often what comes with sort of like, let's put passive in just like quotes, because it still takes a little bit of work, right? Like I feel like it's a bit of a misnomer. And when you first learn about passive income on the internet, you're like, what? I can make money while I'm sleeping. But there's still like upkeep. It just means that there's less upkeep, right? And a lot of that just comes from like having systems in place. And and the best systems are actually intuitive, fluid, and modeled after nature. So there's 0 redundancies and 0 waste. And they're made for people who are creative geniuses like you, to support more spaciousness in your brain and in your life, as opposed to being more rigid. I feel like systems have an association with like, I don't know, admin, an annoying office manager. And it couldn't be further from that. So, okay. Awesome goal. Increase passive business income streams. Love that. We've got that for our first one. What would be maybe like your second most important goal?
I think because it leans into that would be the increasing my free time. And whilst it's not free time, it's like creative space, I guess would be a way to describe it. So increasing my creative space so that I can work on those larger products, those bigger ideas. I have so many ideas and so many things I want to do, but so little time. So increasing time.
I'm like, should I continue? I mean, time, we know that time is fluid and nonlinear, right? So like time expands and contracts like according to the amount of time that we allot a task. So like you can get 12 hours of work done and like get it all done because you've only given yourself 12 hours to do it, right? That's all that you have. If you give yourself 16 hours, it'd probably take you 16 hours to do the work. That's just like one of this it's called Parkinson's law. But we also know that like time isn't linear at all. It's totally fluid. And that's why we can collapse timelines. So let's say this is my timeline. I'm holding out this little string. And this is my goal in the future. And this is my goal now. And we usually think, oh, I need to crawl on this linear timeline in this certain amount of time in order to accomplish something and get it done. But what if time and our timeline actually just wanted to not be linear and be more like a slap bracelet and sort of meet itself, collapse upon itself? And maybe what if we were the ones that were holding the timeline taut and away from itself? Maybe we are the things in the way of the timeline collapsing and, either creating more space or creating less space for us to get things done. So we can talk about that, but just something to think about.
Yeah. And then I guess the typical business goal, which is increase overall revenue by 60% next financial year, is my
Hell yeah, dude.
goal.
That's a huge goal. 60% is a lot, but it
sounds a lot, but I'm just going to do a little shameless self thingy here. But I just did, as I said, we're filming this in early July 2022. And so I've just done my June's like numbers and put together my financial year. And in the past financial year compared to the previous financial year, I had an 85% increase.
Amazing.
Which is
Congratulations.
incredible. I was like, whoa, I'm amazing. This is so fantastic. So, and that was after having a baby. Like I had a baby in early 2021. So I didn't really take any time off because I love what I do and I want to work. But to have that increase, even when I have less time than ever before, has been wonderful to see.
Hell yeah.
So, yes, I'm doing it. So I think 60% is really achievable. I think also as you get to bigger numbers, it becomes harder to achieve those percentages as well.
Right. And like, I love that goal. And in case anyone out there is listening, is like, oh my God, I have to increase my income by 60% year over year. To give you an idea of like a business that would get acquired by another business, like instantly, if they had a 20% increase year over year in their revenue or their EBITDA, that would be like a no-brainer. You could get acquired for millions of dollars. So just as a heads up, like this is an amazing goal and I love it, but and it sounds like totally doable for you. And like 20% would still be awesome. So especially because we're moving into a global recession, not to freak people out, but it's nice to just know that like these are the sort of etheric things that are happening, right? Just like we're paying attention to astrology. And I'm sure there's some astrology that talks about the recession, but it's nice to know like kind of what's up in the ethers.
As above, so below.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. And then, so we've got our 3 goals and they work together so well. They make so much more sense. They make so much sense. Like if we increase your passive income, that's going to increase your business's income. And that's also going to give you more free time. So they weave together really beautifully. Yeah. And then I've got all of your offerings here and you have a lot that you offer.
When I was writing it out, I was like, oh, maybe I should cut it down. But then I was like, but I love doing all these things.
Right. So what would you say?
I like, what's the word? Different things, variety. I have a lot of skills that I can bring to the table. So.
Yeah. Are you a manifesting generator in human design?
I'm a manifester.
Okay, cool. Oh, interesting. No wonder we get along. Projectors and manifestors always love
My
each
husband's
other.
A projector.
Yeah, we vibe. We get each other.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of your repellent energy, and you're not afraid of my sort of boring energy into you.
Works well together.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So these products, what would you say is your top? And I'll read them off. You've got your digital course, your guidance calls, astrology natal chart reports, astrological focus forecast, chakra checkups, ritual worksheets, which are a digital download, your Witchy desktop planner, your psychic divination box, and then your Patreon, which is awesome. You've got a combination of digital products, physical products, and like entertainment with Patreon, which is amazing. We love to see a queen who's well situated in many different areas. But what would you say is like your top revenue performer right now?
The astrology reports.
Interesting.
The course probably brings in more bigger, but it's new. It's still new. I've had one launch of the course, which was in April, and I've planned the next launch, thank you, in August, so next month. So I'm just doing all of the like lead up stuff to that at the moment. So cool. I envision that will be a bigger revenue earner, but at the moment the astrology reports are the ones that consistently sell out every week.
Amazing. Okay, that's super interesting. And those, I'm assuming you have to like, they're personal for
they
each person.
So they take
a ton of time and energy for you.
I've timed it. It's around about an hour and a half for each one.
Oh yeah, that's a lot. But your digital course is, and I would say like your anything that's a download, like all of that is
the downloads are already done. So that's perfect. It just their full and new moon ritual worksheets. I have moon posts that go out on Instagram that mention them, and so they just consistently sell a few every month, which is great. Cool. Okay, and with the digital course, I do offer 2 versions. So there's you just buy it at the lower price and you go at your own pace, and you've got it for a year and you do it however long it takes you. And then there's a live course. So it's not just a set and forget. It is, I'm still doing a live psychic development circle with those students every week. And depending on how many students, depends on how many of those circles that I do as well. So there's still. Do
they ever end, or is that ad infinitum? Once they're in the course, they do them forever and ever?
No. So there's 7 modules. So it's 1 per week for each module.
Okay.
So there'll be 7 for each launch of the course, if that makes sense.
Okay, that totally makes sense.
But they're also my favorite part of it.
I hear you. And do you know what your conversion rate is?
0.9%.
That's great. Okay, awesome.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
When it comes to business stuff, so this is my 3rd year in business, and it feels a little bit like the fact that I've just started seeing a personal trainer. And I'm just like, my goal is I want to be able to do push-ups, right? That's my goal. I want, because I've got some shoulder issues. Let me do push-ups. It'll be strong. I'll be good. That'll be my core. And so I've been going and just like, just going through it, doing whatever. And then the other week I was talking to my husband. He's like, oh, so what'd you do today? I was like, I did a set of this and then of this. And he's like, well, what weights are you doing? And I was like, I think on the lat pull downy thing, I think it was like 22 and a half. And he was like, what? That's amazing. And I was like, really? He's like, like I just had nothing to compare it to. It's just me and my personal trainer. There's no one else in there. So I had no idea. Like, is that good? Is that bad?
What being an entrepreneur is. You're constantly like, am I crushing it or am I totally failing? Like, I'm not quite sure.
Exactly. And I found the same with the whole part of having a business and owning a business, and then even having a podcast. I'm like, is this good? How many downloads is good? No one talks about it. So I'm trying to like actually put tweets out and talk about it so that other people can be like, oh, I can see how other people are doing, so I know where I am.
Well, when you look at the top 1% of podcasts, I think it's like anyone who has more than 3,000 downloads per episode. It's like the bar's on the floor. So great, like awesome.
I read the typical podcast has like 25 downloads per episode. I was like, I am killing it.
Exactly. And this conversion rate, to give you an idea, so like let's round it up to 1%. A typical conversion rate of like an e-commerce platform is anywhere from 0.5% to 2%. Okay. So like that's good. Where you're at is good. And there's room for improvement, right? And your conversion rate can be anywhere from 0.5% to 20%, depending on like if you're talking to the right people, if you're attracting them in, all that good stuff. And that number actually just tells us, okay, if we know that you convert around 1% of people who land on your webpage, on your sales page, then we know, okay, if you talk to 100 people, you're going to make 1 sale, right? So we can kind of reverse engineer how many people you need to land on your sales page. Or what I like to think about is how many people do I need on my email list in order to sell this product to hit the goal that I want to hit? Because it really is just math, right? If we think about it. And that makes it so much easier, because now you can spend the next month growing your email list and saying, okay, I know that I need to have X number of people that see this sales page, right? That are in this, that are sort of identified as warm leads or people that are perfect for this product. So how can I get them on my email list now by like offering them something that's similar to the course that I'm about to offer, that's like a content upgrade or a lead magnet, something that they're going to want to download and get a little bit more of. Do you already have a lead magnet?
I do. I've just
Amazing.
put together a free webinar,
Hell yeah.
and it's going live 3 days after the course opens up for people to book.
Perfect.
And it's basically like the pre to the course. So the course
Awesome.
is the art of psychic divination. So
Cool.
it's teaching people everything from the foundations of psychic work to all the different psychic senses, what they are, how they come through, how to develop them, the symbols, a whole module on symbolism, and then actual divination. So I've turned them simple divination, so pendulums and flipping a coin and that sort of a thing, to classic divination or systemized divination. So that's tarot, astrology, palmistry, and then free flowing.
You have so much fun stuff to work with.
I know. And then free flowing's like all scrying and, you know, pyromancy and all of that, tea leaf readings, good fun. So the pre to that is my webinar, which is going to be Yes, You Are Psychic. Here are the 6 steps to discovering your psychic abilities. And it's just giving them like, this is how you get to that point of knowing, yes, I actually do have this. I can go on and do this. Yeah. So that's my thing that I'm putting together. I'm really excited about it. It's the first time I've ever done a webinar. I've never done this before.
Oh, webinars are they're an amazing, or like I call them master classes or like, you know, free classes. They're such a great way for people to get your teaching style. And as long as you're offering value, you know, you're offering the what, you know, your course or your product, the paid thing is the how, right? So like, as long as you explain the what to people, you're going to be good. I think that sometimes webinars can feel like annoying to sit through when people are sort of pontificating about like how amazing they are and like how incredible their product is. And it's like, people want to learn. So I think as long as you're doing that, you're good, you're solid. Yeah. But are you sending people? So how are you getting people to sign up for that? Are you like putting out ads?
So I don't really do ads or anything. I just utilize the reach that I have with my social medias. So I've got quite a few on TikTok and Instagram. Instagram has the higher engagement rate for sure. That's my favorite because I do get to engage with my followers and my friends and my clients and all of that. So most of that is I'm preparing content in advance to lead people towards that. So currently I'm leading people towards just registering on the email list specific for the course, where they get all of the details and everything on that. And know when, you know, doors are open today, that sort of a thing. So they're specific. I want information about this course, you know, exactly, not just to my full email list. They'll still get emails, but if they're like, I've already done it, or I don't like, I'm not interested, or I can't right now, I don't want to bombard them, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. You don't want to burn out your list. And you can always segment, right? So you can like
that's
create
what
a
I've
segment of people who have already taken it, and obviously don't email them, but everyone else on your list. You want to basically like give people, I would say even before your webinar, this is what I would do. You want to give them the opportunity to basically raise their hand and say, I'm interested in this thing. And signing up for like an email list or even a wait list isn't the most enticing thing to people because they don't always want to pay for a product. Like they're not thinking. So when I teach copywriting or building a product, we talk a lot about the stages of awareness and what you're doing when you're taking someone from not knowing anything about what you do to deciding, yes, I want to spend almost $600 to learn with you over the internet. You're taking them through the stages of awareness. The first stage is problem unaware. They don't even know they have a problem. The next stage is problem aware, then it's solution aware, and then it's finally product aware, where they're like, oh, your product is the solution that I need. So what we're doing on any marketing journey or hero's journey is we're taking people through those stages of awareness. And often when they start here, they could be a perfect candidate for your product, but they don't even realize they have a problem. So they're like, I don't need a product. I don't have a problem. So we kind of want to like talk to the least sophisticated person in the room. And that is the person. It's not like they don't know how to drink tea with their finger up. It's more like they're just the least aware when it comes to like the options, the potential future they could have, I guess is what we call it. So we want to talk to that person. And often the way that we can do that is through offering a lead magnet, like 6 ways to tell if you're psychic or if you have psychic capabilities, or how to use a pendulum to figure out what you should eat for breakfast. Obviously not that, those are stupid examples, but we can make a PDF, we can make a video, we can make an audio download, something that gets them to say, oh, I really want that. That seems kind of cool. And that also educates them through the stages of awareness, taking them from, I didn't even realize I had a problem, to, wait, I'm pretty psychic, but I don't really know how to use this thing yet. And I want to. So then they're problem aware. The next stage would be solution aware. Well, how do I learn how to be psychic? There are all these things I could do. I could read a book. I could go take a class. I could just practice on my own. I don't know. I could watch Hocus Pocus. I could go start using tarot cards and just experiment with myself, right? Or I could take your course. And then product aware is when they realize, oh, Hannah's course is right for me. So, and I know that because Hannah has educated me on what she can offer and like what my life is going to look like at the end of this thing. And that's what I want. So anyways, I feel like I'm like just going off on a tangent, but does that feel helpful?
Yeah. Like one of your episodes, I feel like that was discussed, that journey, I guess, across from problem to solution. And
yeah.
I feel like I should show you what I'm trying to work on. Because as I said, this is the first time because the first time with the course launch, it was very much guided by the institute that I work alongside, which is the Afterlight Institute. So like here, this is the launch dates. This is the email like that we're going to send out and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling a little bit like, oh, it's not quite me. It's not my voice.
Yeah.
And it's not quite what I was hoping to do, if that makes sense. I listened to that episode and it inspired me. I think I was driving home from Byron Bay, which is a 2-hour drive. It was 10:30 at night. My daughter's asleep in the back. And I was like, I have so many ideas. And I had to actually keep pausing the episode and doing a voice recording on my phone. I was like,
yes.
Okay, Google, open voice recorder. And then I was like, make sure to do all this when you get home, end recording, and then continue the podcast. So I'm going to share this screen and this. I mean, everyone can see this if you're watching on YouTube as well at home. But I don't mind. Like I'm a very open person. That's fine.
I love that. You're very generous to also volunteer yourself. Yes.
Can you see this? Yes.
I can. Yes.
So this is kind of what I got from it, like 8 weeks of like heavy marketing, I guess, or prior to heavy marketing. And then the launch date. So I've kind of tried to work backwards. I've also then done the astrological dates as well that I want to launch certain things or when it's going to be best for me based on my personal natal chart.
Yeah.
And the stars in the sky. So then I have the different ways that I would market to people. So whether it's stories on Instagram, posts on Instagram, which also they all cross post to Facebook, and then reels, which are also TikTok as well. So that's kind of all of those. And then I sometimes take those posts and maybe put them on Twitter. My Twitter audience is not as big, so it's sort of less in my marketing plan.
Yeah.
And I've broken it down into weeks, and I'm trying to look at what people's problems are and what their solutions will be. So I've put those sorts of there, and then trying to make my content around that.
Yeah.
But I've only got to week 3, which is this week.
That's exactly right. Yeah. You're taking it through, and kind of like, I always think about when I'm making content, like sometimes I start backwards from what are people's sort of like objections going to be? Like, why do they think that they can't do it or that it's not right for them?
Mm-hmm.
And basically I'm just taking when I'm thinking about making content or selling a product. And by the way, like all this goes into, once you launch your course a couple of times, you can make it evergreen. Mm-hmm. And so the same principles are going to apply. We want to get a certain number of traffic, so number of people landing on your sales page. And that can come through the content that you have that's evergreen, like on YouTube or TikTok in a way, or the podcast. Instagram only has a 48-hour shelf life for content, unfortunately, which is sort of brutal.
Very sad.
It's very sad. Exactly. But we can like make that more passive income an option for you, right? Especially if you build out your email list more. So that's why I'm kind of like saying, yeah, keep making lead magnets, or think about what those could be a little bit sooner, because we also want to warm up and take people through those stages of awareness. And we can do that via email, right? Where they're not always going to see our Instagram post or our TikTok video in the timeline that we want them to see it in, but we have a direct line of communication via email to people. So or even through the podcast. I would say those two places are the best ways, best
Mhm.
places to connect with your audience on your own time. But I think about sometimes the objections that might come up, like, why does someone think that this might not be right for them? What maybe the first question is, well, why would I even need this? Right.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, okay, well, why do they need this? Like, what is their problem? And what is the like real problem there for them? Maybe it's like, I feel disconnected from like my purpose and from what I'm supposed to do in the world. And I feel like I can't trust myself. That's a real problem to have, especially like now in this day and age, and being connected to your intuition and connected to spirit or source or whatever you call it. Like, that can be a balm that eases that ache. That can be like a guiding light when you're feeling lost. I know it has been for me, right? So maybe like that's the problem you really want to speak to. Or I see that there are a ton of problems that you wrote down here, like where you wish that you were special, or you feel lost on your path, or you feel disconnected from yourself. Like, yeah, you don't know what the right answer is. Maybe like anxiety takes over your mind more often than your intuition, and that makes you feel lost. Or that makes you just feel like I can't do anything right. Like you don't have a sense of ease or peace within yourself, and you want to find that, right? Or you want to trust yourself or learn how to trust yourself. And I think tapping into your intuition and your own psychic abilities is the best way to do that, especially if you do it for other people, because it like proves to you that you have access to information that you should be trusting. Like, you're pulling down information for some total stranger that's correct. Like, okay, listen to that, like, stop doubting your abilities. Anyways, sometimes that helps me come up with the content, and then I sort of like puzzle piece it together, like, what would probably be the first objection that someone would run into? And then once I sort of answer that, it's like moving on to the next level in a video game. Like, okay, great. What's the next leveled up question or objection that someone might have? And so often when we're talking to people, the objection that they have is like, well, this won't work for me, because like I've tried so many things in the past and nothing has worked for me before because I still have this problem. Maybe it's like, I don't trust myself, and I've done, shadow work, and I've done therapy, and I don't know, I've gone to Landmark, or I've gone to some Tony Robbins retreat, and I still don't trust myself. Or I, grew up going to church, and I don't have that self-trust or that self-confidence. Like, maybe I'm just so broken that I can't be fixed. I think often that is the existential sort of worry that people run into. So I try to address that too. Like, you're not so broken that like there's not a solution for you. It's just that you haven't found the right one yet. And here's why. And that's really not your fault. Most of the time it's not really our user's fault that they haven't found the right solution yet. It's often that they haven't even really identified what the problem was. And hopefully, as you're taking them through this process, you're helping them get even more clear on, oh, this is my problem, or actually that's not my problem at all. And so I'm not the right candidate for this product, which means that when people actually do end up signing up, they are totally the right people. And then you don't have people trying to return or say, this isn't for me. You're calling in the perfect clients because you're really speaking to them. So your content can do that.
That's wonderful. And all of this, like, as I said, this was prompted by your podcast.
I'm so glad.
It feels so counterintuitive to me as a person, which is, whilst I am a business owner, right? Predominantly, I just want to help people. And I think, like, I love my course. I think I've done a really great job. I rewatched it with the first launch just to make sure that, it came through properly on the website and there were no glitches or I didn't mess anything up. And it's the perfectionist coming through of my Virgo sun. And, I was prepared for any questions that might have been, because I filmed them a few months earlier. So going through it, and I was like, damn, this is actually really good. I wish I had this when I started. So I have like all this belief and this amazing like product. And then it's like, but how do you get from there to selling to people? Because that feels so masculine, if that makes sense, and dominant, and like, buy from me. And it's just like, I just hate being salesy.
I totally, yes. And being salesy is like everyone's fear, right? But I look at it as like, I have this amazing information that like I know works and that I know is incredible. And it would be miserly of me to keep it to myself. Like, it does no one a service if I like, if I don't allow them the solution, like if I hide the solution from them. And like, at the end of the day, we're not responsible for how people decide to spend their money. You know, all that we can do is be in integrity with ourselves and speak truly and honestly to the problems and pain points that people are going through. Give them as much information about why this might be right for them so that they can make the best decision for themselves. And, you know, sometimes they'll say, the best decision is this isn't for me. Awesome, great. And other times they'll say, the best decision is this is exactly what I need. And I have all the information I need to confidently say that. But it's none of my business how other people decide to spend their money. Because like, yeah, that's not my role. And I'm not going to judge them for how they decide to like spend their resource.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think all of this that you've provided is super helpful, especially for creatives that aren't in that mindset and haven't considered the way that people go through to purchase something. Especially when you're so busy focusing on creating, it can be so difficult to switch out into, hang on a minute.
Well,
think about other people's brains.
Exactly. You're like, I know this is so valuable, but sometimes it's hard to articulate that, right? And the more specific we can be too, we tend to speak in heuristics when we're like, when we know in our soul that something is really valuable and we're like, do you want to stand in your power? Do you want to like believe in yourself? And that's beautiful, but those are sort of broad sweeping terms. Whenever we're talking to our audience, we want to give them like a snapshot of what their life will look like, or sort of like what we're talking about exactly, right? Like, so maybe for you, it's something like, do you want to have like complete and utter clarity on a yes as soon as someone asks you a question about what to do next in your business? Like that would be more specific, or, you know, if we worked a little bit longer, I could probably come up with something way better than that, but I'm sure that you can come up with some good examples, because people learn through stories. So the more imagery that we can sort of give people to feed into their story brain, the better they're going to understand what we do and what we can offer them. And then the better they're going to be able to future vision what their life will be like when they have that solution. That's really all we're doing, is just giving people that future, holding that future vision for them. We're the guide in the hero's journey. Like we're Yoda, right? Who says like, use the force and here's here's the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm going to guide you there. And you can do it. It's all about you. So, yeah. And I think like going back, I know I've taken you way over, but you have such a great business. And I think that if you keep in mind that conversion rate and think about just increasing it, maybe even to 2%, right? Which is totally doable for you as you finagle your marketing, your email strategy, and your sales page. And then thinking about like, okay, how can I get, let's say 5,000 people on my email list, because if I'm going to sell 1% and I want to sell 50, right? I don't do public math. But if I want to sell like 55 spots or something, how many people do I need to get on my email list in order to make that math work? Okay. And how can I get them like warm as soon as possible? So I would say keep going with the webinars, because I'm sure like you're so lovely and you're such a good teacher that people will just like fall in love with you and be like, yes, I'm ready. Like, let's do it. People love to come to a free class. So you're building your email list and you're educating them on like the components of what's valuable in your course, because they're getting just like a little sorbet taste test, right? You can even simultaneously do it as an Instagram live and say like, if you want the replay and you want the worksheet that comes with this, just put your email in the link in my bio and I'll send it to you. So that you're capturing those people's email who are watching the content at the same time as like you're giving it out. Because that's going to be think about it as those people that raise their hand. They're like, I'm interested in this thing. And that's who you want to talk to when the doors actually open, because they do want your product, you know?
Oh, wonderful. This has been grand.
Yeah. And this is how you set up an evergreen, any evergreen sort of like funnel isn't exactly the right word, but any product that's evergreen. It's so simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. We just want to drive the right amount of people, the right qualified people to that sales page or to that landing page. And so we can do that through traffic, organic traffic, ad traffic, or email traffic. And I like email traffic because I like free things. So yeah.
Email traffic, I think is good in terms of where to focus. You have a very unique email style. Like it's totally different.
It's not for everyone.
It's totally different to any other email list that I'm on. And it's so funny because as I said before, I'm a Virgo sun, but I'm also an Aquarius rising. So the Virgo sun in me is like, oh, I could never be that like out there and different. And it has to be so like traditional in terms of an email. But then my Aquarius rising is like, hell yeah, that's so fun and cool and bright and poppy. And I love it.
Yeah, well, I've got a Mercury Aquarius, so that makes sense. That's the vibes.
Now my Mercury's in Virgo, so I'm just like, oh, my voice can't be like that. It's too like, I don't know, too out there. But
well, you got to find what works for you. And I would say like just working consistently with like sending out an email every week that you like, that's fun for you, is the best thing that you can possibly do. Yeah,
it's awesome. So I hope this episode has helped, because I know I have a lot of people out there who run their own witchy businesses or intuitive led businesses. And even maybe it's not witchy or intuitive, maybe it's just a standard business, right? And you own it yourself and you want to figure out how to grow it or, get people to where you want to sell them, right? It sounds so marketing and I hate that part, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. You got to do your sacred work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that this is all part of it. And before we talked about self-actualization, like we go through so much shadow work and like confronting of ourselves in our businesses that we can easily run away from in our personal lives. But when it comes to business, we have no choice but to move forward, or it's like, or shut the business down, right? So it's like work through your shit or like this business is going to fail. And being seen, asking to be valued, a lot of that is a lot of our shadows. So
being seen was one thing I had to work on, absolutely, because coming from such a very religious, strict evangelical upbringing, and majority of my family is still in that church, and they didn't know about this business. They didn't know about anything that I did until about a month ago.
No.
Yeah. And it was horrifying. I can't even describe how that was a massive, like, I guess, shadow work moment for me. Because the whole time running it, I accidentally went viral on TikTok, and it brought me a ton of followers and a ton of visibility. And I was like, it's okay, it's TikTok. Like, my family doesn't have TikTok, right? They're not going to see me on there.
But everything makes it from TikTok to Instagram.
And then it went, and then Instagram grew, and I was like, okay, it's fine. Like, there's, and not even just my family, the people from church that I grew up with, the people from my religious school that I grew up with, right? I had people from school start messaging me on my Suburban Witchery account saying, hey, Hannah, I love what you're doing. This is so great. And they're deconstructing as well. I was like, okay,
amazing.
All right, good. This is good.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of gotten away with it, if that makes sense. I got away with it. I was like, yep, I'm being seen, but I knew I wasn't fully seen because people still didn't know what I did.
Yeah.
Until I found out literally a month ago. And this is wild, right? This a little background. I pull cards for every month of the year, right? I do a start of the year spread to see what's happening. And the card for May was the 7 of Swords. And I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
This isn't great, but cool.
Yeah.
And I'm going through the whole month and I'm like, nothing's happening. Like, what I expected to happen hasn't happened. Was it 5 of Swords? Might be 5. Anyway, it was not a fun card. And I'm like, okay, nothing's happening. There's no like split or divide. There's no challenge or crisis or whatever. Just maybe it was wrong. Maybe I looked into it wrong, whatever.
Yeah.
And then on the 30th of May, I had this massive realization. I've been, without going into too much detail, that my family had known about my business for a few months. They had been talking about it as the Hannah thing, in quotation marks. They had been screenshotting and having meetings about me. They like to the point where it got to, you are, banned from a potentially upcoming funeral. We don't want to talk to you. We've had to have all the houses cleansed and blessed by the church because you stepped foot in here. We don't want to see you or your family or your children. Like, horrible, right? And I went straight into, I closed down my Instagram. I closed down everything. I was like, I can't be seen anymore. Delete. And they told me, they're like, you need to delete all this content that makes any mention of the church, of your family, of this, like, full-blown panic attack. I took a whole week off social media. I was just like, no, I can't do this. And then when I did take down the content that they asked for, and they kept going, they're like, no, you need to take this one down and this one down. And I was like, where do I stop? This is my business. This is my life. I'm helping people. And it was this huge realization of, I need to be okay with them not liking what I do. I need to be okay with not having them in my lives because they don't accept me. And there was a lot of, we still love you. We just hate everything that you do and everything that you do.
Yeah.
And I was yeah, that's very Christian. Thank you. And so I came back out of that. It was tough. And I was like, no, you know what? Now I can be seen. Because I have nothing to lose anymore. Right. Yeah. So put everything back where I want, or not. Some of them I didn't, but, came back to Instagram, made my account public again, and went back at it almost with renewed vigor. And now I've noticed there is a shift in how I show up. There is a shift in how I'm coming to this course. It's like, I'm ready to actually make it like better and make the business grow more. And maybe one day I'll have, books on the shelves and I'll be on TV. That's where I could be, because there's nothing I can lose anymore, nothing to be afraid of anymore.
Exactly. You had your dark night of the soul, which is like where you decide whether to turn around and go back or to forge ahead. And you said, I'm going to keep going. Like, it's important and it matters. And like we use the hero's journey so much at Holisticism because we talk about archetypes so much, but the job of the hero isn't to slay the dragon. It's to bring the information back to where they came from. It's to go all the way back from the special world to the ordinary world and to be the bridge. And it's hard to be a bridge. It's hard to have one foot in one world and one foot in another world and like be the connector that shares the information, because not everyone's ready to hear it. But that's the purpose, right? It's not to like achieve glory. It's to like be of service at the end of the day. That's what the hero does. That's what a true hero does. So you're doing that.
Yeah. And it's been wonderful. And as I said, I'm very open. Like, I was open the whole time with my patrons, like, hey, I'm going through this. And I know a lot of them have religious families as well. I was like, I can help you now with if and when this comes up for you, I can help you. I have that now. So I see the amazing transformation in myself because of it. And then also the way I can help more people because of it. And whilst it was really tough at the time, it's, like with anything in hindsight, you're like, wow, really, that needed to happen. So,
and you have no idea what the ripple effects are going to be, like who in your family in the future is going to come out or share who they really are. You're like, you're probably saving people's lives by being yourself. And that is really admirable, but also I can only imagine how dysregulating and traumatizing
it was. Every time my phone rang, I was like a nervous, anxious wreck for a while. I was like, my nervous system is so dysregulated. So I had to do so much grounding work and just, disconnecting from social media for a while, and a lot of writing lists of everything I love and I'm grateful for. And all of those, I had to use all my tools that I teach other people and use them on myself. So
it's hard for us who are really powerful, right, and so personally sovereign, to recognize that we can't control what other people perceive of us, no matter how perfect we are, how perfectly we show up. Like, they're still going to decide to see us however they want to. And there's literally nothing we can do to change their minds.
And how someone else views you is none of your business, really.
It's not. And that's really hard for me to remember. But something that's easier for me to remember is like, I can't change their mind no matter what. Like, I can be the most good. I went to Catholic school, so I get it. I can be the most good. But I could also like be the most bad, right? And they can still decide to see me however they want. I can dress provocatively, or I can dress like a nun and they'll still think, oh, she's such a slut or whatever, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It doesn't matter. So I might as well just like do what feels most authentic to me, or what feels most real to me, and what makes me the most happy.
And that's living like a true witch, isn't it?
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one moment I had a very great discussion with my dad, and I remember him saying like, but what if so-and-so sees your stuff? And this is a person from the church. And I was like, if I lived my life by what so-and-so thinks of me, I would not be living. Like, I would be in this little tiny box. And it was being able to say that out loud and realizing how true it felt to me. I was like, yeah, why have I been putting myself in a box because of what other people might think? So all
Yeah.
this stuff sometimes serves to help us grow into a next level, but it's still difficult. So
Well,
hope-
and you're a mom to two little people who, like, this lesson is, you're going through it to teach them too, right?
yeah.
Like, to just reinforce that, like, just be who you are. And like, you're always changing all the time. Like, your identity isn't stagnant. It isn't one thing. You can't be perfect. So like, just go live. That's the point of being here, right? It's like to experience this world and all that it has to offer.
all the ups and downs.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I think we've rattled off everyone's eardrums for a good amount of time.
I'm so sorry. I took you so far over our calendar invite.
But that's totally fine. And that's kind of what it's here for. And I'm sure there are so many people getting all these nuggets of wisdom from this episode that we are not even aware of, that they're taking away and running with. So I think it's going to be wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time and your energy and your knowledge, and doing a little dive into my own business to show other people the ways that we can work with it, and myself as well. It's very, very helpful, and I'm very grateful to you and your knowledge.
Oh, it was my total pleasure. And we have a free library full of intuitive business education, courses, classes that I've taught and that other amazing people have taught, called the Liminal Library. So I'll send you a link so that anyone who wants to access it, I think there's like probably 300 hours of content in there, can go enjoy it.
Absolutely. I'll pop that link in the description box below. And aside from that, where can people find you?
Yeah, just at Holisticism on Instagram and TikTok. And on our podcast, The 12th House. I think that's where I've dropped most of my wisdom for free. So if you liked this, then I'm sure you'll love The 12th House too.
Wow, wasn't that incredible? Michelle is such a wealth of intuitive business knowledge. Absolutely go and check out all of the stuff that she has to offer, because I guarantee you it will be so worth it. I hope you have taken away some nuggets of wisdom around intuitive and witchy-led business, and some really practical ways that you can actually make a living doing the things that you love and the things that align with your values. If you loved today's episode or any of the episodes, I would love to hear your thoughts. You can leave me a rating and review over on Apple Podcasts, and Spotify has a rating option, but not yet a review option, but I'd appreciate that rating nonetheless. And you can always send me a DM over on Instagram. I'm at suburban_witchery, and the podcast specific Instagram account is at Witch Talks Podcast. So shoot me a DM, let me know what you took away from the episode and what you found empowering or enlightening or just illuminating. It would just make my day and tickle my fancy to hear what you think. If you would like to sign up for my course, The Art of Psychic Divination Level 1, I would love to have you as one of my students. Honestly, I mean, obviously I made it, but I'm so proud of this course, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. Watching my students go from being so unsure of themselves psychically to absolutely nailing it out of the ballpark at the end of that course. And even just 3 weeks in, 3 modules in, I was holding an item in a psychic development circle. They couldn't see it. I'm on the other side of the world, and they accurately described images that were on what I was holding. It was amazing to witness their growth and progression in just the first 3 weeks, let alone the entire 7 weeks. Like, these guys have done so well, and I can't wait to help more people have a similar transformation just like that. So go and hit the link in the description box and come and join me. I'd love to have you there. As always, I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are in the world today, and I will chat with you next time.